So it seems very clear to me that at this point in the debate, there is a contradiction of advocacy coming from the government bench. How is this so? They don't specifically link out to us why it is that common currency as a form of economic integration will lead to coercion in a way that their alternative does not. We would posit that on some level, if you are to accept at best that their argument of coercion is true, it happens on their side when they suppose economic integration as well. Because even if you have things such as free trade and globalization and other forms, it always allows for individuals to be dependent on larger countries in some sort of context. There are problems that these individuals are dependent on these countries, but that's because of economic integration in a globalized context in general. It's not specifically because of common currencies. But what's further to even note under this is that it seems unclear to me what this means, right? Like they say people are coerced. They're not making real choices. But one, it's unclear to me what the impact of this and why this is important for us to consider in today's round. And second, it's unclear how this is specifically, again, linked to common currencies and not simply economic pressures that literally coerce individuals to make decisions every single day. The problem with the government team is that they want to prey on your assumptions that when you hear a buzzword such as coercion, that you're likely to feel empathy for these individuals. But they never demonstrate for us and link out to what this coercion actually does to these countries in a way that is negatively impactful. We would posit that that the coercion that they're talking about doesn't actually exist, and that it actually helps these countries in the long run. So I think what I want to do is I just want to go right back to the case and just point on some things, some extra points of rebuttal. Then I'm just going to go and I'm going to talk about two main points in today's debate. How does economic integration work, specifically with common currencies, and the counterfactual of what happens when we don't have common currencies. What happens to the weaker states then? So what I would really know, not right now. So what I really want to go back through is I want to talk about first how they talk about how individuals are at different cycles of development and how this means that they can't focus on individual. Devon gives you good analysis about why this is actually a good thing and why this is not actually true, right? That individuals are able to make different monetary policies based on different states. Just because they have one currency does not mean that their fiscal policy cannot be changed and vary based on different states, right? When we're talking, there's a difference between fiscal policy and the monetary individual, the monetary currencies that these individuals have. But second, I would like, and we get no response to this coming out of the deputy. But furthermore, like they want you to believe that this erodes sovereignty of small countries is something that is an actually important argument in today's round. We think that economic integration in general doesn't erode the sovereignty of these nations to influence their decisions. It makes them, one, understand that they are linked to other countries, that they have to make decisions that are not simply based on themselves. They want you to believe that sovereignty is some good in of itself. What we say is that their argument about sovereignty is not really about sovereignty. It's about the individuals for these ability for these individuals to make selfish, zero-sum decisions without taking into account the larger economic context. Also, we get no responses coming from the deputy on Devon's analysis about the stricter economic sanctions, about how these were necessities at the time when we're looking at places like Greece, Venezuela, and Argentina that have to impose austerity measures because they have increased their spending to such a degree that has led to higher inflation rates, which leads to a lower quality of life and less ability for individuals to purchase commodities. No response. But also, he talks about why they are less likely to engage economically for simple reasons, right? Devon tells you that without individuals being economically integrated, they are less likely to engage economically, but not just less likely to engage, not just less likely to engage economically, but less likely to engage economically on fair terms, right? That's the thing that Devon talks to you about, how this simply is no longer a zero-sum game. With that being said, how does economic integration work? So OG really wants integration. So we think that considering that, it would be reasonable to suggest that perhaps CG doesn't want economic integration. But we believe that economic integration works in a similar way, such as this. Devon tells you specifically that common currency binds the economic fates of these countries together. Why is this the case, Devon tells you? He tells you why, because now these individuals have the same currency, which means they have the same purchasing power in terms of their ability to purchase commodities from other nations at different exchange rates. This means that with a higher euro, individuals in a common currency, individuals are now able to have and proliferate things such as trade and infrastructure in a faster and a more wide scope than they are with other forms of economic integration or with no economic integration at all. Why is this important? Specifically, not just about weaker states, right? Although we do help the weaker states that actually need economic integration. It's about more than that. It's about the entire regions of stability and the global economy at large. These impacts go much larger than what they've simply talked about. So why does Devon's analysis simply outweigh government's analysis in this particular case? And why do we tell you in opening opposition that this is something that is largely beneficial? When Devon tells you about infrastructure of these weaker states, he's talking about the ability and the accountability now because their economic fates are binding together for a larger economy such as Germany to actually take the accountability, such as by passing a plan that Devon talks to you about when Greece had its economic disaster, to make sure that these countries have standards, that they are actually living up to their prosperity and the economic standards that they would need for fiscal and monetary policy. This is an incentive that they simply cannot delete on their side of the house because common currency simply bind these individuals' economic fates. They bind their relationship in a way that other forms of economic integration does not. Notice that the Eurozone and the West African franc is literally the most proper way for individuals to have economic integration. Yes, okay.
Right, but there's obviously a distinction between influence that comes from economic integration and another country determining what your fiscal policy is, like Germany imposing austerity upon Greece.
Yeah, so again, with determining your fiscal policy, that again is not something that we think is necessarily bad for individuals on their side of the house. It's largely an assumption that they make. We think that these individuals, one, opt into this agreement. They say that they are coerced because everyone else is in it. We say that the coercion is something that is natural and something that has been good for countries such as Greece. Imagine on the counterfactual where Greece would be if they did not have economic integration. So on the issue of how economic integration works, we clearly told you that it allows for individuals to have greater economic prosperity by building up mutual forms of agreement and economic prosperity that allows for them to help one another and brand themselves total. So on the second of what happens when these individuals don't have a common currency, what Devon tells you that it results back to a zero-sum game, where individuals will now have to compete and be competitive because they understand that currency is very large in part of how you're able to compete in the economic sphere. What does this mean and what is the response that we get from this? We don't really get a large response that Devon tells you about the ability for individuals to actually have prosperity in case their economies collapse. What happens to Greece or in countries such as West Africa when they don't have the ability to lean on or the currency and the ability to actually trade in favorable terms? We would not posit on our side of the house that a zero-sum game is something that is actually good for individuals in which they are largely not benefited. We believe that we should help all states achieve economic prosperity.